So good morning. I think as Bill mentioned, we're going to switch the order. I'm Fumi Arewa. I'm a professor here in the Law School and Department of Anthropology. Our panel today is on the interface between tradition and technology, and we're actually going to begin with paper number 2, When the Dead Decide, an investigation into the influence of the ancestors in the decision to use mobile technology in rural community in northern Ghana. And Naja Santua and Martin Alichima are authors of the paper, and Naja Santua will be presenting today. So welcome. Now each presenter will be presenting for 20 minutes, and then at the end we'll have 30 minutes for a Q&A for all papers.
Good morning. My name is Nirgia Santua. I'm from the University for Development Studies. And my colleague, Martin Lalichma, he teaches potential teachers. He's training people to become teachers. And he's my co-investigator in the project that we're going to present. I happen to speak very fast, so please just stop me when I'm going too fast. Yeah. It's a pleasure for us to be here to learn and also share a little bit of what we have been doing. We have tried to see if we can talk to the dead and ask them certain questions so that we can get a better understanding of what they are thinking. As a matter of fact, you would know, some of you at least, that the African's cosmovision spans from the dead, the living, and the unborn. And all these three influence each other, especially the dead over the living. Let me quickly say that my colleague and I, are not here to tell you whether the ancestors exist or they don't. Whether we believe in them or not, people do. And if we are interested in selling a service or a product, we should focus on the customer, not on the product or the service. So that's the reason why we thought that it was important for us to do this and then be able to share what we did together. I would like to say that when we actually got to the ground to do this, a reverend minister, actually, who is a lecturer at the University of Ghana, asked me, now when you say mobile technology, what do you mean? Why don't you break it down into bits and pieces that you can actually go and investigate? So rather than mobile technology, we just focused on mobile phones, a small unit that will give us insights, and then we can extrapolate the findings for other areas. So you see that there's a slight difference in the topic. The influence, how do the ancestors influence, or do they even influence the decision to use or not to use mobile phones in a rural community in northern Ghana? That's where I happen to come from, and so it's my colleague. So what you see on the first slide is actually someone using a phone and a soothsayer or a diviner seeking permission from the gods before we actually got into asking questions. Let me say that Martin Alichma led the field research team. So I'll just do the presentation. If you have any questions, you address them to him. This is Ghana. I realize that a lot of you have been around West Africa and you know Ghana. So we are surrounded by Burkina Faso to the north, Cote d'Ivoire to the west, Benin and Togo, and then the Atlantic Ocean to the south. This is how things look like when we try to find out what is the nature of mobile phone penetration in a couple of countries that we just, a study was done, the African Observatory Report came out with these figures. Well, some of these are on the net, so I won't waste time on things that you can find on the net. Now, if you look at Ghana's population and the number of phones, you realize that slightly there are more phones than even the human beings. But that doesn't mean that everyone in Ghana has a mobile phone. Others even have 3. So we realized that in spite of these statistics, the mobile phone utilization is still very low, especially in rural communities. Now, so we said, why don't we try and find out, because studies have actually come out with a lot of studies about why people are not using mobile phones, but I have not yet come across any study that try to ask whether the ancestors have any role in that. Let me just say that, before I continue that, my name is Niegia Santwa. It was in 1986 that I discovered that Santwa is actually the name of my ancestor. Now, my ancestor Santwa means that is my great-grandfather, my father's 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 father. And the name itself is the subject of another presentation. So that's why in 1986 I decided to adopt Santwa, which is now in my official records. Now, in setting about to try to understand this, we used focus group discussions to interview lineage heads. Now, lineage heads, a lineage is a couple of households, a number of households that have a common ancestor. Now, there's a head who heads that clan or the lineage. Now, that lineage, when there's a problem in the clan, he is the one who goes to consult the ancestors. So we interview the lineage head and interview the ancestor, the same questions, to see whether there is a variation between the answers, and to see whether his use or non-use of mobile phone has something to do with what he thinks about his ancestors' beliefs. We use key informal interviews of the lineage heads, and then we use divination. When I want to call you, I call you on the phone, but you want to talk to the dead, you use the diviner or the soothsayer, which is what we did. Now, when you saw the map, Burkina Faso was top there, and that's the map of the Kassina-Nankana area, where I come from. That little thing hanging there is a forest. I tried to get rid of it, but I couldn't, so it doesn't mean anything. So Ghana, you can see where northern Ghana is, at the border with Burkina Faso, and that's the district, Kassina-Nankana district. Now, let me just say that we conducted the interviews in about the end of August, September. That was in the peak of the peak of the rainy season, where there are a lot of farming activities going on. So it was difficult to even get people to interview. Now, when we got down to interviewing, two of the soothsayers actually declined, that they were not ready for us to use them as mediators to ask the questions. One ancestor actually declined the interview. One soothsayer said the money we were offering for the consultation was just too small. And then one ancestor said, our study will come to a good end, but at the end of it, we'll have to sacrifice a ram. And Martin is in charge of that. And I just want to be a little bit superstitious to say that even being able to be here today probably means that the ancestors have a blessing in our study. Now, let me try to explain a little bit about some of these things. Now, the two soothsayers who declined to serve as ancestors, as mediators, probably was our fault. When we developed our methodology, we said we were going to get 10 clan heads and match them with their ancestors. We will randomly choose soothsayers and randomly pair the lineage heads to go and consult. But that's not the way consultation is done. It is the lineage head who decides which soothsayer to go and consult. So you cannot pick a soothsayer here, no, go and consult this soothsayer out. He won't do that. So it happened that two of the lineage heads wanted to consult the same soothsayer. So he said, no, in that case, for the same question, no, I don't think that is appropriate. The other person said, the questions that you want to ask are heavy questions. Please, can you beef up a little bit of your consultation fee? And then the other soothsayer said, no. The other one who declined the interview, so that's the lineage head. You ask him all the questions. So far, I'm happy with him. All the answers that he will give, I'll be okay with them, because I'm no longer with you. And then the other one said, oh, this is a good study. It will come to a good end. But at the end of it all, you bring a ram to sacrifice to the shrine. So this is just, this is the focus group. Sorry, the pictures are not very clear. This is a key informant that we interview, and this is a focus group. All the interviews were all audio recorded. Yeah, that's the soothsayer, and that's his probing stake. There's a little bit of a small clip just to give you an insight into the divination process. Yeah, so We interviewed 10 ancestors, 10 lineage heads, and then 3 focus groups. Can we just, yes. It's a long video, but we're playing just about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. We just cut it along the way, and then we continue. That's a typical soothsaying session. We sought permission to record it, but we were not prepared. We thought we wouldn't get permission. So when they said, oh, you can record it, we had a mobile phone, which was not the high definition one. So we just barely got something. Yeah, please, let's go.
Ba di baro fulka mai kana na lubu ko fulka
you control and then again and again because you wanna need a cantina on a not na on a gena kutuntum
Okay, well, just in the next 15 seconds, you can pause it. Just to, the video is not very clear. But in probably just 1.5 minutes, a typical soothsaying session, we used to think that it was just a subject of manipulation of the soothsayer. But actually, you can go and consult your ancestor without the soothsayer even knowing what you came to do, if you understand what to do. So he has his probing stick. He holds the top there, you hold the end. And those series of objects, they are symbols that represent something. If you don't understand what those, there are people who are versed in the art. So when he holds the top of it, you hold it down, then you use the probe. The probe. Yes, my sister says he's not happy with me. Please, what exactly is it that he says I've done? Have I stolen or have I raped somebody's wife? Then you do so. You know. Another mistake that we made, or it wasn't a mistake, but we thought that, like we all know, that qualitative study, you don't ask closed-ended questions. But unfortunately, with the ancestors, you cannot ask open-ended questions. It has to be yes or no. Oh, there is something that we now use to make call. You can call somebody from San Francisco to here without necessarily using a whistle, a talking drum or something. Have you heard about it or not? If you can say, can you describe what, you can say that. So we're limited because we had thought that you can use open-ended questions in qualitative study, but with the ancestors, you have to. Yeah, so we can continue with that. So unfortunately, we are not presenting the findings yet. We're just presenting our impressions about what we got from the field. Now, the impressions that we got are that the ancestors influence a lot of areas of our lives, including our decision to use or not to use mobile phones. Then, but they approve the use of mobile phones, though, for specific things, but actually abhor the use of mobile phones for other things, especially committing crimes and things that they think are not morally right. Now, this is a quotation showing the advantages of using a mobile phone by the clan head. I have heard they can send money through a Togdi view, that is through the air, for you to go and collect at a place closer to you without traveling and paying lorry fares. This is good. When we visit the clinic here and they realize your problem is big, they make a call for a vehicle to come and carry you. This is also good. Now, people are not comfortable though with other aspects. You see a girl talking on the phone and suddenly she disappears. She and her boyfriend will meet and you, the father, will not know. Also, some young men make calls while on the footpath. They don't care to give way to an elder. Now, there's something more. Now somebody says that if you call me on a mobile phone to tell me that my father-in-law is dead, I won't mind you because you're not serious. If you were serious, you will walk to my house to tell me that my father-in-law is dead. Yes. Yes, because it's a special issue. Actually, the ancestor who declined that we were not going to use the soothsaying to answer our question was that soothsaying is a matter between life and death. Why will you come to me consult the oracle over how to use a mobile phone? It's not a serious issue. So, no, I'm not available for that. So, these are just a few of the insights as we now put together our entire report. Mobile technology is doing a lot of things for us, enabling us to reach people who were hitherto unreached, solve problems, promote community development, and other issues. But it has its own limitations. For us here who are trying to solve problems that are actually there, we need to be mindful that there are certain social value systems that are very dear to people's hearts, that in our bid to promote the use of mobile phones or mobile technology generally, we have to take those things into consideration. And I must quickly add that when we finish the round of all the interviews, my use of mobile phone changed. At first, when I wanted to talk to my father, I'll just carry all my 3 mobile phones and put on his table. And they would talk there would be a text message he would write, I'll just look at it, you know. And when I'm looking at my phone, he will keep quiet. When I put it down there, he will continue. After the interviews, I realized that was inappropriate. So when I'm going to talk to him, I leave all my phones in the room. And I go, and then he talks, he's relaxed and he's talking. You know, so I have been the first beneficiary of the study that we conducted. People put relationships over ease of communication. And that if you want to promote mobile technology, we should probably see how we can factor these things into our program. I suppose that's about all. Yeah, so we will complete our study. We have done all the interviews have been transcribed. Some of the quotations, we just picked them from the transcripts. So we'll share and validate our findings with those from the communities we picked the information from. And then the IMTFI will actually assist us to publish some scientific papers and then get it to a much wider audience. And the ancestors who actually approve the use of mobile phones who want to do further investigations. How do we do it? How do you think that we might be able to get many more people using the mobile phones to solve their own problems? What should we do? Yeah. This is the end of the presentation. The idea was to make it as short as possible. And if I still have 2 minutes, I'll just give the opportunity to my co-researcher to add a few things that we couldn't put on the slides that I may have forgotten to mention. Then he can probably put some emphasis on that. Then we can wrap this one for now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's almost finished everything. But I want to add, emphasize on the fact that one ancestor declined, and to grant us the interview, just because going to talk to the ancestors or going there to even ask for something from them, it's always between life and death. You don't just come to them and to ask of things that are not, things that are common. And you know what? They refused to take our present. We have to offer something small. They said, no, the ancestor declined to talk to you, so take your things away. We are not ready to take it. And that is it. And so as for customers, every time they consult, even in times of crisis, in times of merrymaking, they go to consult. That's why he had his name. My name, Alichma, is the same. If they born a baby, you have to go and find out what the destiny of that child is, and then even the name to give to the child. Thank you very much.
So our next paper is by Bernadette Gavino Goomba, Storing and Transferring Money in a Cash-Strapped Fishing Municipality in the Bicol region in the Philippines. Now, unfortunately, Bernadette was delayed by the typhoon, and Minu Tanga, a postdoc at IMTFI, will be reading or presenting Bernadette's presentation today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Funmi. So Bernadette will be here this evening. She's arriving later tonight. So if you all have comments on her presentation, you should absolutely, share them with her when she's here. So take notes and all that. I won't be able to answer questions. So the title of the study is Storing and Transferring Money in a Cash-Strapped Fishing Municipality in the Bicol region. And the key investigator is Bernadette Gavino Gumba, who's a professor of economics at the Ateneo de Naga University. Bicol is one of the 80 regions in the Philippines and is presently one of the poorest. On the left panel is a map of the Philippines, highlighting the Bicol region located at the eastern part. On the right panel is the enlarged map of Camarines Sur, highlighting Garchitorena, the area that the study was conducted. This is a map of Garchitorena showing the 23 barangays with 9 located in separate based on data, the total fishing households is 1,732, and based on the Sloven's formula, the sample population for the study is 324. This is the main road entering the poblacion, or the center of the municipality, and this road is mainly used by buses and vans coming from other towns. This is the municipal hall of Garchitorena, Camarines Sur, located along the slopes at the poblacion. During the preliminary fieldwork, the key investigator and the 2 research assistants visited the place for a courtesy call with the mayor and to gather secondary data. This is the view of the entire poblacion area from the municipal hall. This is the area where fisher folks anchor their boats after fishing. So these are some of the objectives of their study. So the first one was to determine the socioeconomic profile of the selected fishing families, to determine the processes and nature of mobile money transactions among them, and to figure out the factors that influence the engagement of the fishing households in mobile money transfer and storage, and also to think about possible interventions of local policymakers and industry developers in expanding the potential of mobile money as a tool for financial inclusions amongst these poor fishing families. So now talking about some of the insights from the field. Some of the insights from the field are based on the conversations with the mayor, the municipal planning and development officer, and social welfare and development officer, as well as ocular observation. So the first thing is that mobile money services are important for Bicolanos, people of the Bicol region, because of close family ties. Members help each other in any way they can, including provision of financial help where mobile money comes in. Bicolanos give high value for children's education. Due to lack of schools in the municipality, many children are sent to other towns or cities, and in the process, mobile money services are used for school fees and other expenses. Big families are common in Bicol, and each member is committed to augment their family's economic status. Many work in Manila or abroad and remit their income through mobile money services. There are many small businesses in Garchitorena which require small amount of capital and daily replenishment of inventory. So mobile money services are ideal because even small amounts of money can be transacted through that. One of the things is the remoteness of the area and the poor transport services and facilities make the physical transfer of money very difficult and time-consuming, so people appreciate the opportunity to send money swiftly through their cell phones. Mobile money services are easy and adaptable for both the service provider and user because procedures are simple. Cell phones are accessible and affordable even to relatively poor people. People in the study need money even in small amounts to defray current expenses. Mobile money services are perfect because transactions can be as low as 100 pesos and service fees as low as 5 pesos. Another interesting culture of Bicolanos is the retail trade. Due to lack of money, people make their meager budget fit, for example, 1 sachet of coffee, 1 spoon of sugar, 3 pieces of bread. Mobile money services are ideal for this kind of economic culture. So some problems that were noted during the preliminary fieldwork were as follows. One was that the provision of mobile money services is hampered by poor network signal. There are limitations set by the networks in the amount of money to be transacted. There's error in punching numbers. So the methodology that was used in the study is as follows. There's primary data gathering. There were key informant interviews about operations and status of mobile money services in the municipality, and that was sort of the basis of the survey, where data was gathered from a sample of population of fishing households involved in mobile money transactions, and there were measures of key variables. And this is sort of the analytical framework of the research and the factors that influence the engagement of fishing households to mobile money transfer and storage. So on the left side are the independent variables in the multivariate analysis. So the profile of the household head, whether gender of the household head and educational attainment, then the profile of the household itself, the household size, the household dependency ratio, number of members studying outside the town, number of migrant worker members outside the country, number of members in skilled jobs, the total monthly household income, the total monthly household expenditure. So these were some of the independent variables. And on the right are the dependent variables. So the total amount of money transferred or stored per month, total number of service providers patronized per month, and the frequency of usage of service per month. And this is sort of their preliminary findings. But thank you, and please keep your questions for Bernadette. She will be here tomorrow, hopefully.
So our last presenter today is Sibel Kusimba, and she's going to talk to us about mobile money and coming of age in Western Kenya.
Thank you. Okay. Just like to introduce the other members of my team. So this was a joint effort. Gabriel Kunyu and Alexander Wanyama are students at Egerton University in Kenya, and Nanjalala Musombi is a student at the University of Nairobi. In Western Kenya today, the coming of age ceremony for adolescent boys continues to be a fundamental rite of passage. It brings together families and communities in celebration and has economic, social, and spiritual benefits. The goal of our project was to examine the role of mobile communication and mobile money in assembling and sharing the benefits of this ceremony. The anthropologist Günter Wagner described these initiation rites in the 1930s. And he said that the purpose of the initiation was to sever the child from his maternal affiliations and to ritually bind him to his patrilineal clan. The ceremony included a ritual circumcision in which the boy proved his manhood by his bravery in the face of the circumciser's knife. It was followed by a period of seclusion where boys were instructed in war, adult responsibilities, and sexuality before being returned to their communities reborn as adults and formally initiated into an age set. Today, the ceremony has fundamentally changed, but still involves several phases of visiting and gift giving, including 2 expensive feasts that will speak of the household's generosity and prosperity for many years to come. We made contact with 40 households who plan to circumcise a child in June and July of this year. Some parents planned a so-called traditional ceremony, and others a ceremony in a hospital with a small meal or other occasion to commemorate. We took note of their plans, and we have kept up with him with a series of semi-structured interviews at several points along this ritual calendar. The first phase of all of this is the preparations. In late July, the families were in the midst of preparations. It begins when the boy receives his spiritual calling and decides that he's ready. He begins dancing and learning the songs and the dances, and he puts on the bells and other aspects of the costume, and they can be seen in the rural areas moving around and practicing the songs. People also make a lot of improvements to their houses at this point. In the bottom figure, you'll see this house was enlarged to make a room for the age mates of the father, who are very honored guests, so they can have a place to drink the beer. In the marketplaces, there is a whole celebration economy around these celebrations. People need to purchase the traditional pots that the beer and the foodstuffs will be served in. They purchase a lot of foods for the feasts, and they might need tents and chairs and so on if they're having a big ceremony as well. For the vast majority of the households that we worked with, preparing for the ceremony means reaching out to friends and relatives for assistance. Mobile phones and mobile money are widely used during this period to secure donations, to make plans about all the aspects of the ceremony, including whose home it will be taking place at, and who will attend, and who will bring what aspect of the feast. Fathers spoke in particular of recovering debts, which would allow them to pay for many aspects of the ceremony. We met many women who were expecting payouts from a savings group of between 3,000 and 6,000 shillings, which they plan to use to prepare the foodstuffs and the beer. Because people rely a lot on their social networks to prepare for the ceremony, everything takes place last minute. Oftentimes people will delay responses to requests until finally they're told that, this party is happening tomorrow or the next day, and then people will begin to send in their donations, and then there's just this flurry of activity when all the beer and the foodstuffs and so on are prepared. We visited this household 3 days before the event. They have 1 acre of land, and the husband is also a well digger. This lady was showing me where she was going to make the beer, but she was waiting for her friends to assist her. And when we followed up after the ceremony, she said she had received 1,800 shillings from 5 of her female friends to help her make the beer. Okay. In addition to using the phone to coordinate and plan the event and to amass donations of assistance, the mobile money account is also important in providing a method of short-term savings for the feast. The feast is a very important indication of the status of the household. It's quite shameful to run out of beer or food, and it's also very hard to know how many people are going to show up. The first feast takes place all night, so people can just kind of drop in whenever they want to, so you really need to be prepared. So we met many women who were saving money on their phone, in particular to be prepared. So for example, as Eunice told us, it's the mother of the household who bears the shame, insults, and all of the abuse if there's not enough beer or food. Another lady told us that not only did she have food and brew saved with a neighbor in a secret place, but she also had money saved on her phone to deal with any shortages that might arise during the night of the feast. Men also had money saved to pay for the circumciser and also to pay for the beer as well. Okay. So then the visiting and the inviting of the relatives happens once they've decided on a date for the ceremony. So this year, the governor of Bungoma decided that the ceremonies could open on August 8th, which was actually when all the boys had returned from school for a break. So beginning on that day and for about a week afterward, the streets and marketplaces were full of these boys with their entourages of friends and older brothers, and they were traveling to visit various relatives. The phone can take the place of some of this visiting and traveling. People told us that they like to use the phone to invite certain friends and relatives. It was not uncommon for people to tell us they had invited 50 or more people using their phone. But just as we heard in the early presentation today, there are limits to the ability to substitute the phone for important face-to-face interactions with grandparents, with age mates, for the father, with the mother's brother, and other really key points of visitation and communication that need to take place during this phase of visiting. Okay, so when they visit different homes, they are given gifts. In this photo, there are actually 2 initiates. I can't really figure out, but the boy's wearing beads and this colobus monkey headdress, and there are actually 2 initiates. They're each being given a goat in this photograph. The boy and his brothers and age mates and friends are also given money gifts as well, and the boy will try to stuff them into his pockets. And on the side there, you'll see a quote from a father who's very careful to explain to us that he did not want to interfere with the donations that his son was accumulating, and that his wife was taking all those donations of small bills on behalf of his son, which I think presents another opportunity or another need for a capability of saving up all these small donations. So we're sort of following up with that as well. Okay. The most important gift that comes out of this visiting phase is the gift of a cow from the mother's brother. It's often referred to as the 13th cow. There are, in an ideal world, there are 12 cows that are given in bride wealth, although in reality these days most people never give 12 cows. But the 13th cow is sort of a gift that goes back the other way from the bride's family to the groom's family, to the father's family. There are a lot of blessings that come with this. The animal embodies all of the blessings and the courage of the matriline that is now given to the boy as part of this transfer. And the giving of this gift is a very public affair. The entourage, as it's returning from the mother's brother, tries to make as much noise as possible. Many times the cow is decorated with a cloth or with flowers in its horns. And all of this is to alert everyone in the community to the giving of this gift. So this lady in the middle was circumcising her 4th child and was very busy using the phone and personal visits to try to secure a cow from one of her brothers or one of her cousins. In her case, there was a very generous bride wealth of 8 cows, but she was having a lot of trouble finding a relative who could give this gift. And she wanted me to understand that when the mother's brother's cow is given, that a lot of blessings come to the mother herself specifically. When we followed up with her, she had been unable to find a gift from one of her relatives, but her household decided to have the reception of the mother's brother's cow with a neighbor, just to kind of share in that public display, even though they weren't really going to get a cow, which again speaks to the very shared nature of this gift. Okay, so then the feast is prepared. I'm skipping several other rituals, but the beer is made, a cow is slaughtered, and you can see women here beginning to prepare a lot of foods. And then the drinking party will also begin, which is really the heart of this ceremony. The bakoki are the age mates of the father. So these were the men who were circumcised along with you when you were young. So you will spend your adult lives circumcising your sons together. And it's a kind of a competitive experience, because each feast should ideally be more generous and more sumptuous than the last. The worst thing that can happen would be to run out of beer, especially beer, but also food, that would be a very, very big embarrassment, and you would never hear the end of this probably for the rest of your life. So it's very important. You can see they're just getting started over here, and then this little hut here is sort of a close-up of the one that's in the picture on the top, and this is where the ancestors are sitting and also enjoying the beer along with those age mates. So we've been working with each household and seeing, what they purchase, how they use mobile money, what happens at the ceremony. So just as one example, this is James, the tall man in the jacket. This is his second son to be circumcised, Simon. He has 2 wives, and Simon's mother lives with his mother, Robai, who is the lady in the blue scarf there dancing. James earns about 6,000 shillings a month as a farm manager and accountant for one of the local farms. And this is a list of everything he spent to pay for the feast. He also used M-Pesa to recover what he called debts in the days leading up to the ceremony. He hired a truck using assistance from some of his friends to travel to the mother's brother's house in style and then take the 13th cow back to his home through the marketplace with a lot of singing and dancing so that everyone could notice the gift from the mother's brother. He also alerted me to his contingency fund, which is that he had left 1,500 shillings on his mobile money account in the days leading up to the ceremony. And I didn't really understand what he was talking about, but I realized that everything relating to this drinking party is usually spoken up with a lot of euphemisms. So in following up, we met his younger brother in the days after the feast, and he was very happy, and he said everything had gone really well, and of course the boy was very brave, as they always are, and that the contingency fund had really come in handy because they had run out of the traditional beer, but using the contingency fund, they had been able to go to the marketplace where they sell changa, which is the local liquor, and he had been able to buy a lot of it and bringing it back to the Bakoki, and so they were very, very happy about that. So he said that the party was very successful. Okay, so this dancing will continue late into the night, and then in the morning by the river, the boys will be smeared with mud. The circumciser will invoke the ancestors and the Supreme Being. And after the event, when the boys are recuperating, they are again being given money and small gifts, farm animals, and this picture has a 1,000 shilling note that the boy has just been given. It's a little bit hard to see. Okay, so these boys are recuperating. They're wearing a little skirt, and they each have a slingshot, which sort of recalls the period long ago when they would go into the forest in their period of seclusion, when they would learn all kinds of adult things. During this period, they are often taken care of by their paternal aunt. So, since they've now come into their father's side of the family, their mother really they're too young to be looked after by their mother, so now their father's sister is a kind of symbolic mother or even a symbolic wife to these boys. In the past, the customary gift was a goat, but what we've been discovering is that the father's sister gives a variety of interesting gifts to the boy after this seclusion period ends. In sometimes clothing, sometimes shoes or school books, and very often a mobile phone. We've had several paternal aunts who are giving a mobile phone to the boy, which is the first time, of course, that they will have a phone, and so I think there's some interesting symbolic meaning to this gift, and it does say a lot about the importance of a mobile phone today in terms of creating a socially connected person in Kenya today. So, to summarize then, the mobile phone and mobile communication is very important in this ceremony. The mobile phone is used to invite relatives, to coordinate events, to take photographs for sharing. A lot of these are uploaded onto social media as well, and to amass donations to allow the cost of the ceremony to be met. I think the most important use, or the most interesting use, I guess, that we discovered during this initial phase is the idea of mobile money as a kind of short-term savings method that's very personal and very private, and that enables people to kind of quietly bring together all the resources they need to have a generous feast for their friends and neighbors. And I think it's a really interesting contrast to the savings mechanism of the cow, which is a very public, a long-term kind of investment with a lot of symbolic and economic value. So this is kind of the opposite of that in some ways, and maybe meets some of those short-term savings needs. I was really surprised by this too, because when we did research in this area 2 years ago with the same communities, basically, I didn't find a lot of emphasis on mobile money being used for saving, or for the mobile money account being used for saving. In fact, most people cashed out their remittance and used it right away for immediate needs, or sent it on to someone they knew and loved who needed the money. And a lot of people spoke of the social pressure to send remittances. So this coming of age ceremony, I think, presents a very different kind of social context where people are using this short-term savings method. So that's one of many other issues that we're going to be following up on. This weekend, there's the last part of the ceremony, which is called the passing out, where the boys are put in new clothing and they sort of emerge from this period where their aunt is taking care of them, and they sort of will be presented to the community and they will receive more gifts. So we are actively working on observing that and studying it. Thank you.
So questions, please try to use one of the microphones when you ask your question. They're located in the center of the room. Yep. So could you come up to the microphone? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Deepthi. I'm from IFMR, India. My question is for the first presentation, the one from Ghana. I think the study was interesting, reaching out to your ancestor. But I want to understand how frequently the local people reach out to their ancestors to make any sort of life decision. And also, I want to understand like how important these soothsayers are within the community. Do they influence the decision of the people? And I really want to understand, do you think soothsayers manipulate the answers? Or, you know, and how much they influence the decision? And do you believe in reaching out to ancestors yourself? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. My colleague actually mentioned some of the occasions during which people might consult the ancestors. When there is a mysterious disease, family for you might wish to consult the ancestors. You say, oh, the child didn't sleep last night. We think that we have a proverb saying that, I mean, he slept like a baby. If the baby doesn't sleep, there must be something wrong. If you're about to get married, I should probably even think that even before the circumcision, they will actually consult the ancestor, see what it is. Before you travel, people actually consult the ancestors. How is it getting good? Successful? I have to make a sacrifice before I travel, or do I have to go and come and make the sacrifice? And there is a study that someone conducted that said that when it comes to snake bite, the first person for anybody to go to is always the ancestor. I mean, you go to the soothsayer first. So what the health system has done is now to place somebody at the soothsayer's place. So because that's where they will go. Now they want to find out why. They think that snake bite is not a normal thing. It's always a form of communication from the ancestor that no, you have not done something right or you have done something wrong. So we want to use that sort of to force you to go and ask, oh, what is it I have done that my son was bitten by a snake? Then you now, or you can dream. You dream that maybe you were locked up in a coffin or something. Then you say, no, this is not right. Let me go and find out. Maybe the ancestor is trying to reach me with some information. So something mysterious happens, and then you think that the first thing to do is actually try to find out whether you clear all the spiritual hurdles. And if you find that, no, this is actually something normal, then you now go to the hospital or something. So like marriage, travel, sickness, even schooling, farming, yes. If there's a poor harvest, because usually after the harvest, there is a feast. There's an agricultural and cultural feast. So if if the harvest is poor, you can conduct that feast. So there must be something that the ancestor wants to tell you. Then, can you give us a bumper harvest next season? Because you did this, you didn't sacrifice this, that's why because you've been eating alone, so I won't give you food. That's why your millet failed. So now you make it a point that after the harvest, you actually give some to the ancestor. So these are the occasions where people might consult the ancestors. And whether I myself believe in the ancestors or not, I think that I do. I think that I do. It's not about whether my belief is false or I don't think that I even lose anything by believing in the ancestors. I don't lose anything. I've actually gained something. You see, socially, it is good to be socially connected. Like we said, for us, for the culture that I come from, if you have an enemy, the severity of the enmity is when you refuse to attend a funeral in the person's house. That shows that, yes, this is an arch enemy. Because once you don't attend funerals, you can never sit together to plan anything. So it is not about whether the belief is even makes sense or it doesn't. It actually helps us to organize ourselves. And so, for instance, in 1980, when I was going to secondary school, my father just took me to the shrine and said, oh, this is your boy. Well, fortunately, my father has been to school. He can read and write all right. This is your boy. He has come of age, and he is also going to school, because this is where everybody now is going. Now, only farming alone cannot help. He has to go to school. If he wants to farm, he will farm better if he goes to school. If I don't tell you and then he goes there and something happens to him, so why didn't I inform you that the boy was going out of the house to go somewhere? So I've put him in your hands. So, clear the way for him and let his studies go far. I don't know whether that was, the ancestors have actually heeded his say or not, but at least from 1980 to now, at least I've acquired quite a bit. I have 2 master's degrees. I've entered for PhD twice. I said I just dropped out because I want to make more money. Probably the ancestors heard my father's plea. Maybe they did. But even if they didn't, it's okay. Yes. Yeah, so I think that it is important for us to pay attention to these things. Even if you don't believe it, don't tell anybody you don't believe in them. Because you can actually set a barrier between you and people by just telling them that what you believe in doesn't make sense. Maybe it doesn't, but just keep quiet. Yeah. And I was just talking about my name, Santua. That's my ancestor. Santua actually means the house has fallen. So why will I be proud about such a name? But his father, or Santua's mother, gave birth to 12 children, and all the 11 of them died. Sorry, that was my father. All the 11 of them were girls. So, we are patrilineal. So once there's no boy in the lineage, the house has fallen. So my ancestor was the 12th child, which was a boy. So my ancestor's father then said, oh, you said our house has fallen. Now the house has truly fallen. Which means that now there's a boy who is now actually coming to build the house. And as if that was not enough, my own father is called Badari. Badari means at least one will be left. His mother also gave birth to 11 children. All the 10 of them died. It was only my father who survived. He's still alive. Happily, he's still alive. So these things, that's the way it happens. Maybe it's coincidence, but maybe it's a pleasant coincidence. Yeah, so I mean, that's the milieu that I come from, and I try to understand things from their perspective, because sometimes it helps. It helps you to normalize your relations with the society. So when I go home, the first thing is to go and greet all the funerals first. I go and greet all the funerals. If there's a death somewhere, I have to go and greet the funeral, sympathize with them. Oh, sorry, but if I have to send some cola, I do it. Yeah, so yeah, that's the way I organize my life, and it works for me, and it works for the family, so I don't have a problem with that. Thank you very much. If my colleague has something to add, maybe he would.
Whether we believe or not, I just want to share with you some experience in the field. You've seen the pictures. We sent digital camera. My brothers, the thing didn't work. We were disappointed. When we got there to snap, the thing failed. We did almost everything. So we now manage with our cell phones to try to see if we can get little bit of pictures. So you see, and again, our people, they consult almost all the time. Farming, funerals, before they even perform it. Even when somebody dies, they have to go out and know when you want your funeral to be performed and how it should be performed. That's how it is. So they consult. So we know very well that, no, the way these people are linked to their ancestors, maybe the ancestor will have influence over the use of phones. And I want to believe that, yes, they have. That's why they don't have time. So many people don't even have time with phones, because the most important issue is you have to move to the person. You don't speak on phone. So the lesser information, I mean, those things are not necessary. So some of them don't see why they should be using phones. But what is more important is have to go to your house, wherever you live. Even miles away, I have to travel to come and communicate directly to you. That's it. And the soothsayers, I want to say that the soothsayers, they are very few in the system. But upon all that, the ancestors, I mean the lineage heads, also they know the people, the soothsayer who has the truth, or who is trustworthy. So we go to them, and sometimes you see 2 or 3 going to the same soothsayer. And then others will take us far, very far, to a soothsayer who is, though there may be one in their community, but they don't want him. They want somebody who's far, knowing very well that is trustworthy soothsayer, so we should go there. And we have to travel with him to that place, because we want to talk to his ancestors. So that's how the whole thing is. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, but I have to say this, that it's possible that the soothsayers can manipulate the soothsaying session, but it may not be easy. Like I was just telling you, it is possible if you have a problem and you know how the process goes, you can actually go and consult the soothsayer silently. One of our research assistants actually held the probing stick, asked the questions on his own mind. There are 2 objects. Then the stick, you ask the question in his own mind, yes and no, and then he will tick. So without the soothsayer even knowing what question he had asked and what answer he had received. It's possible, you never know. You don't ever know how these things happen, but what I have seen is it will be very rare for the soothsayer to, unless the one who doesn't know how to soothsay, then, I mean, and for what reason? They are the poorest in our communities anyway. So if they were aiming to make money, I'm sure they would have been very rich. I think that it's possible, but maybe not very regularly done. Yes.
Hi, I'm a graduate student. My name is Melissa Rapp, and I'm here at UCI. And I also had a question for the researchers from Ghana. I wanted to thank you for a really rich presentation. It was really fascinating, and I think the idea of using divination as a method is incredible and fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. And so my question is, you've shown us that we can listen to the ancestors, we can ask them yes/no questions, and we can listen to what they say, but I'm wondering if we can kind of reason with the ancestors. If we're thinking about promoting a program of financial inclusion, can we kind of persuade them, and what might that look like? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think before I started, I actually said, before I ended, I said our next stage is actually when we do the interviews, some who strongly, approve the use of mobile phones for the lineage. We wanted to go further and then ask them, so now you approve the use of mobile phones, but we still realize that its usage is still very low. How can we promote? Should we make the handsets free for people, or should we subsidize the units, or what should we do? Now, when you can narrow down things and then probably come up with something. But you need to have a series of alternatives that you can choose from, because you cannot, let's talk about how we can do it, yes, but the assessor will not be able to discuss that with you. So there are all sorts of possibilities. For those of you who have an interest in this area, maybe we can actually work together and see how far we can go with this. Yes, thank you.
Are we coming up here? Or just use the microphone. Okay, great. My name is Amol from the GSM Association. Have a quick comment to the last question about influencing ancestral decision making. I think that might be kind of a marketing challenge, maybe, but who knows? But that's I enjoyed your answer as well. My question though is, so the session was about tradition and technology, and both the Ghanaian team and the Kenyan team had their studies were focused on rural activities, and in both those countries we have seen a lot of migration of rural youth to the urban centers, leaving the children and the grandparents behind to kind of manage the farm and manage things. Wanted to see if you guys, if it came across in your research, how these traditional practices with the coming of age of the boys, or the consulting the ancestral folks for decision making, if that is being translated with any, or in any ways in the urban contexts. If any of these things with coming of age of boys in the urban areas, if there's any relevant bits around that, or even on the Ghanaian side, if folks are consulting ancestral folks in the villages when they're making decisions around mobile phones or around other bits. So yeah, curious to know if that has come across in your studies. Thank you.
Well, just from what I've seen, I don't think it's a question of people being left behind. It's really that people are living in two worlds and moving back and forth constantly between two worlds. So, for instance, one of the boys that I showed in the photograph is a Nairobi boy who recently started Form 1 after this ceremony, but he lives in Nairobi and his parents are civil servants who live in Nairobi, but they came home to the rural area to have the ceremony. There are remittances and people moving back and forth across that rural-urban divide, so that I think it's not really a question of one group over here and one group over here. It's really the same people who are mediating these two different worlds.
Thank you very much. I happen to work for a West Africa regional program called the West Africa Resilience Innovation Lab, which is actually a USAID sponsored program for the whole of Africa. There are 4 labs, one in Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, Horn of Africa, and West Africa. We are looking at rapid urbanization, climate change, and food security, and how they interplay. We have just finished a round of community consultations where we have been trying to understand the dimensions of resilience of the communities that are always on the move. For those of you who know Ghana, you know Ashima is one of the biggest slums in West Africa. We did a study there, and some of the things that we discovered is people try to import their rural way of life into the urban center. And so you would even find a kraal just by the motorway between Tema and Accra. There's a kraal. They try to find a little space to put 2 or 3 cows there. And I had a picture of cattle actually competing with vehicles on the streets. So if people are trying to even bring how they used to live in the rural areas into their their temporarily found home, I should think that mobile phones would probably be a good opportunity for them we didn't specifically address that communication aspect. Maybe subsequently we would probably put one or two questions there to address that. I think that's a very important observation. So I think that, like one of the lineage heads said, if my son is in Kumasi, which is central Ghana, and he's able to send me money, if I have to perform sacrifices to the ancestor, and he sends me money and I'm able to buy a chicken to sacrifice to the ancestors, why would the ancestors not approve the use of mobile phones? Because they benefited from it. So I think that the barriers to the widespread utilization of mobile technologies are probably just very brittle. We can just break them with some amount of care anyway. But I would note down that point, and then we will do some more further investigation into that and see how we can benefit from your insights. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Minu. I also have a question for Zabel, which is linked to your question, Allison, about this question. I really like the setup of the savings in the cow versus the contingency fund as a kind of, dual kind of structure. But I also wanted to hear about the in-between, right, where there are so many, this sort of sets itself up as a kind of classic spheres of exchange model almost, where, you have the short term and the long term, and they're kind of hierarchically ordered. But even I wanted to hear more about, about the in-betweens, really, right? And also, I was interested about this concept of shame, right? That all these sort of things that one is shameful about, that one wants to keep private, are done through the contingency fund, right? And that sort of sets itself up as the kind of backstage upon which this public ceremony is contingent on, right? And if you could say more about the importance of that, right?
I think definitely one father was, we were asking him about, all of the debts that he was recovering, and then, he said, look, he pulled out his phone, he said, this thing is for private things. He's basically saying, I don't need to give you all the details, but I'm gonna have a really big ceremony. So it seemed particularly the men did not want to get into the details of how they brought everything together, whereas the women are more open about, I'm in a savings group, or my friends are helping me, things like that. And I think you're right about the in-between. Even the bull, the maternal bull, in the past, if it was ever slaughtered, there would be curses to the family. Wagner describes that from the 1930s. And there's a rich anthropological literature, for example, Hutchinson's work with the New Era, where she had, the cattle of the girls, which were sort of social ritual cattle, and then the cattle of money. I didn't find that. What I found was that people were very open about viewing this cow as an investment, and they said, well, if the boy has trouble paying fees, we will sell it. And in one case, the mother's brother gave 12,000 shillings instead of a cow. So there seems to be a lot of back and forth that definitely needs to be examined more. Thank you.
So just, I have received a question of what is the value of 26,300 Kenyan shillings in dollars?
That would be about, is it $300? Something like that.
I actually have a question, and this actually, it's $300?
Yes.
I have a question that addresses actually both presentations that I'm very curious about. Both of you mentioned, if we think about the broader social context of interaction, there's a tension sometimes between face-to-face and mobile phone interactions. Oh, can you hear me? There's a tension between face-to-face and mobile interactions. I was curious to hear more about that, and I was also curious to know whether we see any generational differences in that most of the examples you talked about relating to that tension related to communications with elders or people that are older. And I'm curious to know, if we look at the younger generations, do you see that tension? Do you see changing or sort of generational differences in how people think about social interaction in light of mobile technologies and communication methods that don't require face-to-face?
Yes, and I think there is a youth culture around mobile phone use in Kenya as well. I wish I knew more about it, and I'm sure some of the people here do know more about it, but many of the young boys are posting their photographs on Facebook, for example, and they are quite comfortable texting, especially with other young people about the ceremony.
For the elders, it was very different. Many men said, I cannot go to my bakoki. I must go to them in person to invite them to the feast. I cannot call them or anything like that. People are very, texting in particular is very informal. Young people will not text to even their parents. Like if Gabriel was here, he would say, I cannot text to my mother. That is very dishonorable. And so I don't know if every single child feels that way about their parents, but I think many, particularly in the rural areas, would not send a text message. Or like your father-in-law, you know, that's another avoidance kind of relationship, so you wouldn't send a text message there, you would call. So there are, I think, a lot of you know, these issues of generation, especially, that influence the way people choose face-to-face or you know, mobile communication. Does that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I remember I mentioned and I even brought out a quote about, you know, the perception of the older generation about how the young people are using mobile phones. For instance, you know, you just hear them talking. One of the key informants said, you know, in the olden days, you knew your daughter's boyfriends because they will come to the house. They will come home, and you will see them. But now, the girl just calls, or somebody calls, you just hear that she's talking on the phone. The next moment, she's gone. You don't even know where she's been. So it's like the older generation feel that mobile communication is encroaching upon the very fabric on which the society and the community is constructed. And then they feel helpless, that there's nothing that we can do about it. So maybe we need to, if we believe in it, we need to consciously build that into our marketing thing, so that people feel that, oh yeah, even though there's mobile communication, we still have some control over certain things. Yeah, so there's that conflict, and it's going to grow. And maybe the youth are going to win.
Thank you very much. The very